Take your place on my wall of fame by supporting me. Thank you, my nerd. Let me tell you a story, my dear nerds. You all seem to love story time, so prepare for another story. You see, as I told you a million times by now, I grew up in the fabled magical lands of Romania, Eastern Europe, which means that my childhood looked like this. You know, it looked like that cutscene from Family Guy where Meg went to Eastern Europe, basically. But that wasn't the problem. For all its faults, I loved my childhood there. The problem was that I wasn't a tall kid. In fact, I was one of the shortest kids in my entourage, and to add insult to injury, I was pretty scrawny as well. So, in such an environment, you need to quickly adapt, because the ones that adapt, they get to prosper, and the ones that don't adapt, well, they get to have traumas in their middle age. I'm somewhere in the middle with As a kid, you had to create a good character. You had to create a good personality for yourself. You had to dress yourself up in a sort of metal casing so that people see you as still awesome to hang around. And by people, I mean kids. Remember, this was the late 90s to early 2000s. So you had to shine through your personality. Otherwise, kids would just, outright ignore you. Like, kids were ruthless back then. And just like this tiny handheld right here, the GKD Pixel 2, which also has metal casing, one had to impress. One had to impress through the fact that it felt very, very good when you interacted with it. It felt very, very good when you played with it, and it felt amazing when you carried it with you to meet your friends. And I'm not projecting here. When I refer to this handheld, I'm not talking about myself. I'm not looking at the GKD Pixel 2, and I'm not projecting my own things through rose-tinted glasses. I'm not projecting through rose-tinted glasses, okay? This handheld isn't like me. For starters, after 3 decades, I started a YouTube channel. I don't think this handheld will do this. However, just like me and this YouTube channel, this handheld also plays games quite well. Before I continue though, my dear nerds, I just want to quickly cover, there it is, that this GKD Pixel 2 was provided to me by the nice guys at LitNXT. You see, LitNXT is pretty awesome. It provides me with review devices, so show them some love if you want to. But as always, nobody saw this video beforehand, nobody paid me, all words here are my own. But if by the end of the video you want to get a GKD Pixel 2, check out the link in my video description. There's also a coupon there, you can get 12% off. And who doesn't like 12 freaking % off? So coming back to the GKD Pixel 2 Plus, my dear nerds, this is probably, in fact, you know what, not even probably, I'm gonna be cocky, this is the best feeling micro handheld that I ever had the pleasure to feel in my hand. This has flaws. Wait until the second part to find out those flaws, give me that delicious watch time. But let's talk about the things that made me be all gaga over this handheld in the first place. First of all, the metaphorical elephant in the room, the metal casing. The metal casing on this thing makes it feel as if this is one of those handhelds that will survive through the whole freaking timeline of Fallout 4. This feels solid and high quality as all heck. It's held together by screws. If you see these screws, and it just feels like $1 million freaking bucks. Thankfully, it doesn't cost $1 million freaking bucks. But at the same time, I really think that the way in which this one feels will make most other handhelds feel like cheap e-waste by comparison. Can we even say that something is e-waste if it's metal? Is it e-waste associated with cheap plastic? Food for thought here. I am kind of a bit in awe over this handheld simply because it feels this great. The D-pad is springy and very nice feeling in the hand. You can hit diagonals perfectly. Totally passes Russ's contra test. The buttons, the ABXY buttons, feel mushy, but this is such a good pairing with the D-pad. They're both membrane, by the way. The select and start buttons are actually clicky, like deliciously clicky. It's a good contrast from the D-pad and the ABXY buttons. Part of the design presumed that there wasn't a lot of space for the trigger and shoulder buttons, so they are flush with the casing and they are up here. But this actually works well. You would think that something like this isn't ergonomic, but ergonomics lesson, my dear nerds. Ergonomics is a fickle, annoying little mistress, in the sense that people associate ergonomics with curves. People love curves, not just in this hobby. People love curves, but ergonomics sometimes doesn't always mean curves, even though we think it does. Sometimes ergonomics just means, does it feel awkward when holding it over long periods? And you'd think that such a small handheld is immensely non-ergonomic, but you're not holding it like this, like a freaking crab. You're not a crab, you're one of my nerds. You're a human, not a crab. You would hold it like this. The fingers would cover the back, these two fingers would be here at the shoulder and trigger buttons, and the thumbs would be on the D-pad and ABXY buttons. And together, like this, you are actually in a very non-pressured position. The wrists aren't all, in an awkward position. You can stay like this for a long period of time. Now, the problem with this handheld would be the screen, because it's quite small. This is a trade-off. When you have a micro handheld, you can't by definition have a big screen. That's not how it works. But if you have good eyesight, if you have tech dweeb level eyesight where you can interact with small screens for quite a while, then you won't have a problem. If you have eyesight like me though, and you end up squinting like I still have my eyes open, by the way, then in half an hour with this screen, you might have a problem. This is where you need to figure out which kind of nerd you are. Again, if you're like TechDweeb with very good close-up vision, I am super jealous of people that have that. I think you will love this handheld. However, I will add the disclaimer. You need to understand from the beginning that this is not a universal Swiss Army knife emulation device. This is one of those handhelds, because of its small size, where you should only play old emulated consoles on it, meaning Game Boy, 8-bit and 16-bit era from the 90s kind of consoles. The writing was supposed to be big on the old CRT screens, and that translates okay in a small screen. But anyway, coming back to this handheld, let's check it out properly. We have the volume buttons here, we have the SD card slot, my dear nerds, we have the speaker. It's a downward firing speaker, but it's not the end of the world. Type-C that actually does well with fast charging. You can use fast chargers with this and it shouldn't be a problem. This is a big deal because, in case you don't know, many of these emulation handhelds, they don't handle fast chargers like the ones on your phone properly, and they simply don't charge. Or even worse still, on other handhelds you might mess up the battery. This is not the case here. You have the peace of mind that you don't have to carry a special freaking 2 amp charger for this one. You can just use what you have for your phone. And despite its very small size, if you can believe it, they still fit a 3.5mm headphone jack here. You know, it's some things that should really make other handheld manufacturers stop and think. And on this side, we have what's probably the best addition to a handheld is visual representation of how much battery do you have left. Do you see these 4 lights here? Do you see them? Each of them represents 25% of the battery. And when you're at the last one, you know that you should freaking charge your device. When it's full, you know that you can enjoy your stuff. It's that simple. And what else do we have here? We have a power button, a menu button. and that's about it. I love the design. And you have some holes if you want to put a lanyard here or a lanyard. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that thing. Again, not a native English speaker here. Mea culpa, I expect to be penalized in the comments, but hey, you have to love me anyway. What can I tell you? You don't pick the nerds that you've been given. You pick your friends, but not your nerds. Okay, so love me as I am. One thing though that is pretty amazing about this handheld, which I don't think a lot of people talked about, is the standby time. You see, my dear nerds, I wanted to make this video about the GKD Pixel 2 around 3 days ago. So I had to postpone it a bit and I just put this guy on standby and I left it on my couch. 3 days, right? I lost 31% battery. Think about that. Like, what's 31%? In fact, let's see how much I have now after playing with it. Yeah, now I have 67% battery left, which is arguably still pretty good. Now, disclaimer, this doesn't have a big battery. As far as I remember, it has 1800 milliamps, arguably very good for this size, but you should have like 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours of battery life. This is still pretty good. Plus, I'm basically ripping off Russ's video right now, but in my experience as well, it charges quite fast. So I don't really have that battery anxiety that I have with other handhelds. This, you know what this is designed to be, my dear nerds. This little handheld is designed to live in your pocket. Okay, it's designed to be with you when you're out and about and for you to simply forget about it and to just take the handheld out when you have a few minutes available to play wherever you might be. In terms of games, you might be curious what comes with this, because this actually comes with a pre-bundled card. You get some Portmaster games, Stardew Valley, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, and Celeste. As always, I don't endorse ported games like these. These are games that you can still buy to this day, and I think we should have a very clear distinction between emulated games, which are basically abandonware, and pirated games. They are not the same. I hate that there's this weird gray area in our niche. There shouldn't be a gray area. If you own Celeste, you should be able to put it in Portmaster by yourself, but I digress. I'm not I didn't fall out of a tulip truck. I know some people would love to have these pre-bundled. That's why companies are doing it. But coming back to our little handheld here, we have quite a few platforms. We have normal arcade, vertical arcade, MAME, the Ataris. You get the idea. SNES, NES, the Game Boys. We have the Sega consoles here, Neo Geo, PlayStation, and PSP, surprisingly. But again, I wouldn't play PSP on this. It's not optimized for that. Yeah, you can. For example, you know what? Let me fire up a bit of Ridge Racer so you get the idea. This is the dedicated version of PPS SPP, which you can access through the menu button over here, next to the power button. And let's do a quick race so you get an idea of how this looks. So, can you play it? I would say yeah, but you see, with 16:9 you actually lose quite a bit of screen. So what you should actually do is join the dark side, where it's pretty awesome, and you should stretch to fit. In this way, you save a bit of screen and it looks quite a bit nicer, I would say. So you can play the odd PSP game on this. It's just at the limit in terms of power. Don't imagine it can do all PSP games. In fact, you saw a bit of stuttering. To wrap up, you can play a bit of PSP, but the question is, should you? This just works way better as a sort of old nostalgia device. Of course, PSP is still nostalgia, but I mean, nostalgia from way back PSP, nostalgia for old people, for super old people. You also have Pico 8 here, which is pretty nice depending on how you look at it. And there's actually quite a few games that people might be interested in, like the Pico 8 version of Celeste. But in my humble opinion, this is where it shines. This is the original Game Boy. I am the kind of person that hates to waste screen. I don't care that much for these overlays. Of course, some people might love the original aspect ratio. However, this is not for me, my dear nerds. So we're gonna quickly go to the settings. Scaling, core provided, more like horrible provided. And we're also gonna turn off the screen overlay. And our beautiful end result will be this. Look just how much screen we have now. For such a tiny device, you need every millimeter of screen at your disposal. Why am I so horrible at this game right now? Holy. But you get the idea, right? Now onto the bad stuff. The elephants in the room, if you would want to call them like that. First of all is the software. You might have noticed that I'm running basically emulation station here. But out of the box, it comes with its own frontend, its own UI that GKD made for this thing. Thankfully, you can disable that in the settings and you can enable ESD by default. It's literally just a toggle in the settings. I advise you do it. You don't have to interact with that custom interface from GKD only once. It's like Internet Explorer rules. You only have to enter that frontend to activate Emulation Station, and that's it. Then you're home free. And with Emulation Station, I actually decided to keep this for the silliest of reasons, my dear nerds. It actually has such interesting background music because it's renditions of modern stuff just turned into 8-bit music. We have the Game of Thrones soundtrack. Green Day, I think it was American Idiot from Green Day that I heard in delicious 8-bit, or Boulevard of Broken Dreams, one of them, but it is a vibe. It certainly, it's such a delicious vibe. I can't get over this. Apparently, modern songs turned into 8-bit is one of the things that I never knew I wanted or loved in this world. It's just amazing. And I encourage you, if you get this handheld, just switch to Emulation Station, put your headphones on, and jam to that delicious 8-bit music. But anyway, the software, first bad thing, right? We talked about how the software sucks. We don't even give it the time of day, just jump to Emulation Station from the beginning. Like Russ also said, the default should have been the Emulation Station interface on this. Besides this, the other deal breaker that I imagine is the screen. I lost this earlier in the video. The screen will either break it or make it for you. You must search deep within your heart. You must figure out which kind of nerd are you. Do you have tech dweeb eyesight in the good way? Or do you have horrible Vlad nerd eyesight in the squinty bad way? Depending on this, you might know if this little beautiful unfocused guy is for you. If you have the eyesight for a 2.4 inch, then my nerds, this is a recommendation. Just expect that some platforms look way better than others. I would never play, like I said, PSP on this. However, even with my bad eyesight, I could do a bit of Contra. I'm not above Contra. I could do a bit of Adventure Island. I could do a bit of Plumber Goes on a Walk and Jumps Over Mushrooms game. I could play those and I could see myself enjoying them. However, I think that I love this so much simply for superficial reasons, for how it feels in the hand. Again, metal, you know? And metal should always be associated, in my opinion, with luxury. Now, I'm a big proponent for plastic handhelds. Look at this hypocrite right here. I, in theory, see plastic as the best material for handhelds. It's lighter, it's more resistant, it doesn't shatter like glass. However, when you feel fancy, when you feel like part of the bourgeoisie and you want a handheld that you imagine very wealthy people use, then you want to feel that that luxury, and that's when metal handheld just feels nice. This feels like an Ioneo device, if I'm to be honest. Ioneo is associated with luxury and associated with high price tags. This one arguably doesn't have a high price tag. You can get it for around $80 to $110, depending on the period, depending on the coupons. Again, there's a coupon in the video description for this. But at the same time, my dear nerd, you need to think that you're gonna pay a bit extra for this handheld compared to others. But that extra will be reflected and you will feel it each time you hold it. Anyway, I don't want people to think I'm like marketing this. No, these are my thoughts. I'm taking my thoughts from my head. I'm putting them in front of you. This is what I'm thinking when it comes to this handheld. We overpay for a lot of stupid things in this hobby. Comfort in the hand, you know, it's not the worst thing to spend a few extra monies on. And yeah, that's kind of my point with this. But you know what's also my point? You subscribing and liking this video. If you like what I do, help me grow this channel, my dear nerd. Push that subscribe button, push that little bell button so you're notified whenever I release a new thing. And if you want to help me get new handhelds, then you can become a channel member or a Patreon. And either way, you get a special status in my Discord, which you can join for free. There's a link in my video description for this. And my dear nerd, if you decide to support me directly, you also get your rightful place on my wall of supporters, which I feature at the beginning of every video. So yeah, just something to think about, my dear nerds. You know, there's perks. You'd have your name inside every video of mine, and I plan on releasing videos way more often. So just imagine how many times you'll have your name plastered in my videos. Well, that's a good deal. That's better than some trade deals. So so yeah, that's all from me with this video. I love you very much. I hope you know that. And let me know what you think of the GKD Pixel 2. Is it good? Is it bad? What are your thoughts on this? I'm waiting to see what you think about it. I think I expressed my thoughts fairly clearly on this. Now it's your turn. I read every comment. Leave your opinions below. Bye, my dear nerd. We'll see each other next time.